But what's the difference? What does it matter if we don't actually act? I want to talk to you today about the most dangerous thing you might be hearing about Donald Trump. It's something you should listen for. And this is going to sound perhaps like crazy talk, like conspiracy talk, except time and time again we see this occurring. It happens. It has happened, in fact, for every Republican president. Let me say that again: every Republican president since Richard Nixon. Merrick Garland, he's the Attorney General right now, is arguably the most dangerous man in America. And when you hear this from Garland, you need to be concerned and you need to act. You personally need to act. It's the only way we avoid the most tragic outcome, which is the loss of democracy in the United States of America, which we are right on the precipice of. So I'm going to tell you what the most dangerous thing you can hear about Donald Trump is, and I'm going to tell you what you can do about it. And to make the point clear, you need context. For context, let me introduce you to every Republican president, starting with Richard Nixon till now. Here they are, folks. That's Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, and of course, the fascist himself, Donald Trump. Every one of these people committed a crime that got Americans killed in some form or another. They got people killed throughout the world. Be merciful on my microphone there. Every one of them should have done prison time, not jail, prison. Difference being serving greater than a year behind bars. None of them have. None of them have been held accountable. Not even Richard Nixon. The great victory for democracy for Richard Nixon, regarding Richard Nixon, was supposedly that he got impeached. All that accomplished was that he wasn't allowed to be president anymore. He didn't actually go to prison for Watergate. But you know what? I'm going to assume you're familiar with Watergate. So let me give you a quick breakdown of all these people's crimes, and I'm going to skip Watergate. Richard Nixon was involved in the Chenault affair. That was when he was running for president. His sabotage of Lyndon Johnson's peace talks with Vietnam. Now, if you're scratching your head saying, Lyndon Johnson engaged in peace talks regarding Vietnam? Yeah, during the Johnson administration. He's the guy that took over for Kennedy. During the Johnson administration, we were talking to Vietnam, the North Vietnamese, about ending our conflict there, ending the war there. If you're familiar with American history, you'll know we didn't. That is because, and this has since come to light, but people in our government at the time knew it. That is because Richard Nixon, through contacts, told the North Vietnamese that he would give them better terms for peace, and that they should cancel their peace talks with Johnson. And they did. And we had war in Vietnam for years after that because of those actions. This was known in the federal government. Nothing was done. It only became known by the general public decades later. No punishment. The depths of depravity there, I could go on for some time. But let's rocket through this list. Fortunately, we can speed it up a little bit because those two next guys, Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush, they did their crime together. That would be the Iran-Contra affair. That is where they engaged in an illegal arms deal. These people tried to, or they successfully funded a war against a socialist government through a terrorist group called the Contras. There was hearings about this. This is when Reagan was president and George H.W. Bush was his vice president. There were hearings about this. The fall guy for it was Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. He did very little time in jail, and he wound up being the head of the NRA afterwards. George W. Bush. Now, for most of you, certainly if you're able to understand the words I'm saying, George W. Bush was likely a president at one point during your life. Certainly all of you will be familiar with the war in Iraq that wound up being just sort of a general war in the Middle East that lasted for 2 decades. All of that began because he lied. He had Colin Powell speak in front of representatives of the American people. I believe, I can't remember the date, but before we got into the war, and he gave a rather infamous speech wherein he brought in a vial of anthrax and said that he was certain that they had weapons of mass destruction. And he said that we, as in the American government, had intel that there was weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. We had no such intel. That was a straight up lie. George W. Bush was part of that lie. Right now, he's a free man. 7,000 Americans died in that war. 8,000 contractors died in that war as a result of that lie. We don't know how many civilians died. All that blood is on that man's hands. All of it. He is not in prison right now. Donald Trump is different only in that he is not bright enough to play this game the way it is supposed to be played. He cannot keep his mouth shut long enough for the cover-up machine to work correctly. And I realize it sounds like a conspiracy. There's nothing theoretical about it, though. It's not a conspiracy theory. And the wild thing is, there's no conspiring necessary. All you have to do is be a rich person in government to benefit from this. When Republicans are in office, they give tax cuts to the rich. This is known. What is rarely talked about is the fact that most people running our government are rich. We have a lot of millionaires in charge. The Republican line is, well, they're in charge and they're millionaires because they're very competent people. No. They are in charge and they are millionaires because they are corrupt. Now you need to listen for the very dangerous thing that got all of those people, the Nixon, Reagan, HW, and W, they got all of them a pass. Because you can hear it with Donald Trump. It is step one of the cover-up. Most dangerous thing you can hear is silence. I know, you hear about Trump all the time. He said this, he said that. That's why it's not working as well this time. If he could keep his mouth shut, if he didn't announce a new run for president, if he wasn't constantly, pushing terrorist ideology onto people, if he could just go paint like George W. Bush, you wouldn't hear any of it. Because step one is silence. Tell you what happens with all these fellas. You get the bombshell. You get the damning evidence. Then the Justice Department acknowledges that they've seen it in a press conference that is very vague and does not commit them to any sort of investigation. Then they let time pass and they say, well, this is a very serious matter and it's going to take some time. And they know you're going to get bored. They know the details will get fuzzy in your brain. And once they feel like there will be as few eyes as possible, usually on a Friday night when they know less people will be interested in hearing about it, or right before they know another large piece of news is going to come out, they'll make an announcement explaining to the American people that they are washing their hands of the situation. This has occurred for everyone up there, including Donald Trump. Do not forget that Donald Trump has multiple prison-worthy crimes under investigation right now. A good way to think about this, let's look at Donald Trump's 4 major crimes. I got a Vox article that sums up nicely the top 4 crimes. There's the Department of Justice Mar-a-Lago classified documents investigation. From the Vox article, the investigation to Trump World that most dominated headlines this year, 2022. Perhaps at first glance, the most banal, a federal investigation into possible mishandling of classified documents. A non-president had done that. You would not need 2 years of investigation. You might not even hear about it because that's the kind of thing you get yanked off the street and shoved into a van for. Zip-tied with your hands behind your back, bag over your head, taser in your guts until you tell them where it is. That's how serious those documents are. Those are nuclear secrets serious. Those are list of agents in the field serious. The fact that it's been 2 years and for just that, just taking them out in the first place, Donald Trump wasn't arrested. For just taking them out of the SCIF, Secure Compartmented Information Facility, the room wherein they are supposed to be kept, viewed, and work with and left in. Even if it's your business to work with them, they are left in that room. You do your work in that room. Just for taking those out and taking them with him as a little souvenir. Donald Trump should be in prison right now. The trial should have ended a year ago. But years have gone by. January 6th, required for conviction. For a conviction. Not just charges to be filed. No more than the evidence that appeared on national television. January 6th did not require the committee for a conviction. It did not require a years-long investigation. You roll that orange bastard in front of a judge. You play the tapes of what he said with the cameras rolling, sending a signal to every TV in the nation that cared to see it. That is enough. The evidence is ridiculous. There are mountains of it. Now, of course, the January 6th committee did a wonderful job. They did get us details that were fascinating in the sense that looking at a car wreck can be fascinating. But it wasn't necessary for a conviction. You understand? The main thing January 6th accomplished was keeping this guy on the far right, not an accident, in the public's mind, and helping the public memorize, more importantly, the details, making these so familiar, these details, that that you can name the broad strokes of them without having to think very hard. Without that, there would be zero chance he would see criminal charges, even though he did it on camera. By the way, in the Vox article, that is item number 2, the January 6th insurrection. Let us not forget, also in Georgia, it is seen as part of the January 6th insurrection, but separately from that, and you can charge these separately, by the way. You can have multiple cases going against somebody at one time. And in fact, for anybody else in the country, for somebody who's not rich or not a politician, you would have this. In Georgia, he tried to pressure the state to overturn their votes. There is a recording that came out with him trying to do this. Again, that alone, in fact, that piece of evidence alone, is enough to convict. It is not an accident that it seems to take so long for a powerful person to have their day in court. It's not just that Trump intentionally tries to delay, although, of course, that is what he does. He tries to delay. But the government tries to delay. And this is done so that you will forget about it. Fourth item in the Vox article is the New York investigations into the Trump Organization. This is by Letitia James, the New York Attorney General. As they say, Letitia James has spent the better part of 3 years investigating whether the Trump Organization, his flagship company, misled either banks or tax officials about the value of its assets, allegedly inflating their value when seeking a loan from a bank or minimizing their value in order to reduce taxes, or probably both. This is just fraud, and it's a rather crude case of fraud. It is a rather blatant case of fraud. It should not require a great deal of work for prosecutors. Well, guess what? The Trump Organization was found guilty. Great. Donald Trump was not charged. The organization was. That is how corrupt our system is. Trump Organization is headed by Donald Trump, and only by Donald Trump, and it is not a large organization. There's a handful of people in it. That's it. And I'm including his secretary. But they are allergic to actually holding powerful people, wealthy people, and particularly Republicans accountable. It's a pretty straightforward theory I have about why that is, but I want to be clear that it's a theory. Let me first stick with what we know to be fact. Richard Nixon, the Chenault affair, no punishment whatsoever, not even known until the man was buried by the general public. It was literally covered up. Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush, Iran-Contra, they got thousands of people killed, and through their unrest that they caused in countries around the world, likely got Americans killed as well. George W. Bush, we can actually give you a firm number. He got 7,000 American servicemen and women killed, as well as 8,000 contractors working for us killed through his lie, which was a crime. No punishment whatsoever. Barack Obama, himself being a weak neoliberal little punk, let him go. He set the tone. He said, we are going to move on as a country. He did not learn anything from those last three clowns. And of course, things got worse. We got a straight up fascist in the form of Donald Trump, who has just been mocking us. He's been making a fool out of America. Those 4 crimes talked about in the Vox article are just the 4 most egregious. In my own state, we have the fact that a bunch of people working for Republicans, claiming to be Republican electors. I don't want to call them the Republican electors because there is no such thing. My state, Michigan, already had electors because there are only one set of electors. The fraudulent group claiming to be the Republican electors tried to break into the Michigan Capitol building overnight and hide out. They were stopped at the door by police, thank God. But they tried to hide out so they could submit the wrong person as the winner of Michigan. Donald Trump did not win Michigan in 2020. But a group of people working for the Republicans tried to make it seem like he did. They tried to create confusion. They broke the law. On whose behalf did they do that? Donald Trump. Why is he not in prison for it right now? This is a corrupt country. There it is. My point is, those 4 crimes mentioned in the Vox article are not the only crimes. There will likely be a field of study, specialized certainly, but nonetheless, a field of study just for Trump's crimes in his 4 years in office. We, for the rest of our lives, will hear new things about what this guy did. Silence is step 1 of Merrick Garland's plan to cover this up. He is as standard issue as a Democrat-appointed attorney general gets. His mission is to hide the crimes of Republicans. It might not be intuitive to you that a Democratic appointee would try to cover up the crimes of Republicans. Might not be something that feels inherently understandable. But recall that the Democrats who are in office largely are also rich people. They are rich people who rely on a base that cares about right and wrong and cares about getting progress done in the country to get elected. So, Democrats have a harder time giving themselves insane tax breaks. They know that Republicans, their base does not care about right or wrong, about whether or not a policy will help the country. They know their base doesn't even, the Republican base doesn't even follow policy. They don't even know what policy is. I would point you now to the various videos of far-right extremists accidentally saying they want far-left policies. That is how little they understand. The corrupt symbiosis there is that it benefits rich Democrats to let corrupt Republicans go. They also are uncomfortable with the appearance of going after their political opponents, because never forget, these are also cowards. And so on and so forth. So, January 6th committee just released their final report. And it's over 800 pages. I myself have spent days reading it. And I've yet to have a full breakdown of it. So we will have a couple more weeks of big headlines coming out about that. But what's the difference? What does it matter if we don't actually act? How much worse does it need to be? What are the American people expecting to hear? What would be a satisfactory level of horror, of criminality, to insist upon action? We should have that already. What does the DOJ need to hear? Nothing else. To charge the man? To win a case in court. They don't need anything else. In fact, they didn't need any of it. Enough has played on TV already for them to get a conviction. But they have made it clear that they're running the playbook. Why is it clear? It's been 2 years. We're now entering into our third year without even charges being filed. Donald Trump took SCI documents. When you hear classified documents, understand that is just scratching the surface of how bad that particular case is. Donald Trump took SCI documents, to my knowledge, our highest level of security. He took them, and he refused to give them back. We right now don't know if he sold them. Currently, it appears that there are still documents missing. We know that NFT scam came out recently. That's a great money laundering operation. We know he had a property that appeared to be doomed, that a mysterious investor, CGI Merchant Group, with ties to people all over the world, by the way, businesses all over the world, bailed him out on. Bought it at an obscenely high price. It's a great way to launder money. Is he laundering money for the sale of these documents? We don't know. Because we have heard the most dangerous thing that you can hear about Donald Trump from Merrick Garland. Silence. When the public pressure became too much for Garland, he pawned off a degree of his responsibilities on Jack Smith. That's the guy who's now in charge of typing up a report and handing it to Garland. But at the end of the day, Merrick Garland is going to have to make the decision, charge the man or don't. The reason you have heard so little from Garland, it's because he also doesn't know what he's going to do. And it's because he's made what he wants to do very clear. What he wants to do is the standard Democrat playbook. Turtle up, wait, be quiet, And when you're not paying attention, let him go. That's what he wants to do. That's what he keeps trying to get away with. His big watery eyes, with his weak legs, with his lack of a spine. That's what Merrick Garland wants to do. He's made that so clear. You cannot let him. You need to pressure him. Good news is he's a coward. Good news is, to my knowledge, all Democrats except the very far left are cowards. Fun fact, most Democrats are moderate to conservative in terms of the policies they support. Viewed on a world scale of politics, they are moderate to conservative. And that also tends to mean they are cowardly, which means pressure from their voters has a huge impact on them. Democrat appointees are also quite cowardly, by and large. In my state, the Attorney General is named Dana Nessel. And I kind of like her. When it comes to state-level things, hey, she knows what she's doing. When it came to filing state charges for Donald Trump for that incident in the Capitol, silence. Until a local news agency asked her directly. I happen to know because I was writing the email. Her answer, she was going to let the feds handle it as part of their January 6th investigation. That was 2 years ago. Donald Trump was allowed to keep inspiring terrorists, to keep spreading election lies, to keep trying to end democracy in America, to announce another run for president. He was allowed to do all these things in that time. Silence is the most dangerous thing you can hear from Merrick Garland. Here is the strategy thousands of us need to undertake. Step 1. Contact the DOJ. Link in the description. There's a form to fill out. Tell that little punk you see him. And you're sick of waiting. If he has failed to put enough evidence together by now, I cannot think of a way for him to recover his honor. None exists, to my knowledge. But if he says that's the case, he's lying. In fact, let me be clear. There already is no way for this guy to recover his honor. He has already utterly failed to secure justice for the American people. He has already demonstrated that he is not worthy of the job he holds. But nonetheless, you got to pressure him. Your friends got to pressure him. Copy that DOJ link I have and post it on your social media with a sentence equating to telling your friends, your family, your social media groups, let Garland know you see him. Let him know it's time to prosecute Trump. File charges immediately. Jan 6 committee put it on a silver platter for him. And by the way, they only recommended 4 charges, and they are, all things considered, pretty darn light. It's still 25 years in prison for Trump, especially considering his health. I mean, I'm fairly certain the guy's, 1 foot in the whatever. Anyway, it's basically a life sentence. Functionally, it's fine. But do know they could have gone harder. And they put this on a silver platter for Garland. I don't believe they did this for any reason other than to embarrass the man, as well they should. to embarrass the man, and I take that back, to keep it in your mind, to keep it as a topic of conversation. They were very savvy, and that doesn't surprise me. They had Republicans on the committee. The Democrats needed their hands held for holding Republicans accountable. You got to contact the DOJ. There's another layer to this. Long term, for the health of America, if you are a young person and you're saying, right now, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I'm going to take a job for a couple years while I figure this out. May I suggest to you getting involved in criminal justice? We need left-wingers wearing badges. So much of what is wrong with our country simply stems from the fact that culturally, law enforcement has skewed to right-wingers. Left-wingers are not really thrilled by the idea of pointing a gun at somebody. They're not really thrilled by the idea of making somebody else's day worse. Right-wingers love that stuff. Left-wingers, not so much. Truly left-wing people do tend to be brave, ironically enough. You would not have had Uvalde occur with a bunch of left-wingers on that police force. Unfortunately, it was a blatantly far-right police force, so those cowards hid while the horror happened within their earshot. Left-wingers need to get involved in policing. We need people wearing badges that we can actually trust. So if you're a young person or just somebody looking to change careers and you are left-wing, consider becoming a cop. Short term, and certainly for dealing with Trump, the plan is clear. Contact the Department of Justice, get loud on social media, copy paste and post the link that I will provide in the description. Fill out the form, let's say once a week, and remind Merrick Garland, just make it a habit of yours, that you're watching and you're waiting and your patience has run out. This is Wicked. That stands for What You Can Do. It's your old pal Jake. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video or if you found it useful. In the comments, let me know if there's anything that you want to know what you can do about. I'm very interested in putting together a collection of resources for people that are actually interested in making progress with this country. I'll see you next time.